Thank you all for coming. We're very glad to see you all tonight. I'm Rachel Collins, one of the counselors here, the school counselors.
And I'm CJ Huffman. I'm a teacher here. I teach kindergarten. I actually teach Ellie over there. And I'm also the positive behavior support team leader at our school.
And I'm Annette Armstrong, one of the other counselors. And so, boys and girls, let's line up and we'll go out that back door. Okay, if you want to make a line back by the door. Blake, I think you'd like coming with us too. We have some snacks and we have some other things.
And that little weekly quiz that was on your table was just kind of brainstorming material as you were coming in and getting started. So we're not going to be doing anything formal with that, just kind of some questions that that might come up for you. So.
Do you have any teams? Want to come join us? We have some fun things.
It's nice to see all of you here tonight. Thank you for coming. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our positive behavior support systems that we have in place at our school and talk to you about how you can use that in your home as well. First of all, I want to talk to you about what positive behavior support is. We call it PBS, and what it is working to stop undesirable behavior by altering the environment, teaching appropriate skills, rewarding appropriate behavior, and replacing undesirable behavior with a new behavior or skill. And really, the thing that we push with with the positive is encouraging students to behave and really helping them want to behave, helping them grow into be good citizens because they want to be, because it feels good to make good choices. And research shows that students need 3 positives for every negative. So we like to really teach them that behavior and then reward them for following the behavior. In our school, each teacher starts the year with a positive behavior support folder that includes some of our awards. And you may have heard your children talk about Honored Otters. This is what an Honored Otter looks like. Our guidance department creates these, and we reward students across the school for showing good citizenship, responsibility, respect, trustworthiness, fairness, and caring. And each week, students get a chance at winning Treasure Box, but I have to tell you, what they really like is just receiving this little coupon. They really like how good it feels just to be congratulated for making that good choice and showing those good character traits. Another award that is a little bit bigger and a little more special for the students is the Otterific Student Award, and it looks like this. Some of you may have seen these come home. Once a week, these awards are announced on the news by Mrs. Kimplin or Mrs. Hermanson, and the students get a little treasure box toy to go home. And these are awards given for students demonstrating our 3 school-wide expectations, which are be safe, be responsible, be respectful. So you may have seen this come home. This may come a little less often than the Honored Otters. The Honored Otters we give out very frequently. These are more special for the students because they come a little fewer and farther between, but it is something that we hope that every student will be able to try to earn at least a few a year. And then our most special award for awarding that behavior is this award. It's Otters Making a Difference. And this award actually receives a phone call home. So if your child has not received one, this is one that is really exciting for you because you may receive a phone call from Mrs. Kimplin or Mrs. Hermanson saying what a difference your child is making for our school. This is really going above and beyond. Other areas of our school where you'll see positive behavior support are in our celebrations, such as Student of the Month, and that's a student that goes above and beyond to show good behavior throughout the month. Each teacher chooses one Student of the Month each month for the award, and parents are invited to attend the special event to celebrate. We also have the Mathlete, where students demonstrating outstanding effort in math earn the special award. We have the Author of the Month, where they're showing extra effort in writing. They earn the Author of the Month award. And you also see PBS throughout our school in the different pictures and rule posters that you see throughout the school, just getting everyone to be on the same page and understand our expectations throughout the school. If you've had lunch with your child, then you may have seen in the lunchroom we have the cup system where we reward good behavior, and we have different posters with the pictures showing the different rules in each area of the school, such as out at the playground, in the cafeteria, and near our bathrooms. These are all showing positive behavior support. So now the important question for you tonight is, how can you use PBS at home? One thing we recommend is Provide clear expectations for children that are understood by all family members. It is so important to be consistent throughout the household where everybody knows what the expectations are. Also, it's important to recognize and reward that desired behavior with your children. Teach the desired behavior, and don't just assume that children know what's expected. Many times it's easy to say, well, I know you know how to make your bed, but sometimes we just need to teach them those first few times and reward when they're doing those behaviors and actually make sure they understand what is expected of them. And offering replacement behavior when needed. And we're going to talk about each of these things a little more in depth. For the clear expectations, make 3 to 5 expectations that apply to all areas of the home. For example, be safe, be respectful, be responsible. We use those expectations throughout Oakstead, so students are very familiar. So these would be great ones to include in your home as well. And the expectations aren't the same as rules. Expectations are a little more general and really can be used anywhere at any time, and you just talk about those specific rules in that area. For example, the expectation may be to be responsible. Now, you would discuss those rules in the different area by saying being responsible in your bedroom means to make your bed and put your toys away. Having those expectations, you can just, in general, you want your students to always, you want your children to always be safe, be respectful, be responsible, and then you just discuss in depth what you expect for each of those in the area. And at our school, to build consistency, we have a matrix that we discuss as teachers and staff members in the beginning of the year to make sure that we are consistent. And we develop, using our expectations, those rules in the different areas so that we can understand ourselves and teach the students that desired behavior through the school. So this may be something at home you want to look at with develop with your child, what your expectations are, and discuss and just even write down a few rules in each area of what that looks like. For recognize and reward behavior, this is so important. When we were growing up, we may not have seen that as often, and I know many people think of discipline as telling them, no, don't do that, which is important to make sure they understand, and there's sometimes, consequences are important as well, but we really want to push those, recognizing and rewarding the behavior that you want to see. For example, noticing when children are following those rules and give them that specific positive praise. Not just saying, good job, nice work, but actually explaining to them what you're complimenting them for, such as, I saw how you made your bed this morning without being reminded, nice work. Or thank you for being respectful at the dinner table by listening to your sister talking. To where then they're understanding that, oh, these are the behaviors that I'm going to be complimented for and rewarded for. We also want to teach those desired behaviors. You want to talk to your children and model the behavior that you're expecting. You want to show them this is how you make your bed. Discuss with them what good choices look like in each area of the home. Provide those opportunities for practice. And this one, the role play, kids love that. Where you even sit together and say, okay, if we were doing this, what would you do? Or, oh, show me what it looks like to be respectful to your sister. Just acting it out and really practicing it so that they understand and can demonstrate the behavior that you're looking for. And this one, we want to replace negative behaviors. We want to give them some way that they can channel that energy. If they are showing that negative behavior, we need them to understand that there is something you can do rather than those behaviors that we don't want to see. So we want to offer suggestions or alternatives to the negative behaviors, such as, instead of stamping your foot and screaming, you can use your words to tell me you feel upset. It's okay to feel upset. That's a natural emotion. We all get upset sometimes, but there's a way to handle that. And you really want to teach them the appropriate behavior in those times. And of course, this isn't something you can do as they're stomping their foot, but something you want to talk about beforehand and say, when you're feeling upset, it's okay to say, I feel upset, and to tell me why you feel upset. And offering those replacement behaviors oftentimes will minimize the negative behaviors that you don't want to see. Another example would be when you're finished playing with a toy, put it in your toy box instead of leaving it on the floor. Giving them that replacement behavior that they could do as an alternative to the behavior that you don't want to see. And that's an overview, so I want to just take a few questions from you for positive behavior support. If anyone has any questions for me, and then we're going to just do a reflection together and share out as a group.
I do.
Sure.
I have a child that's coming into kindergarten next school year, and the child that's leaving this school going to Rushi this coming up. So, age difference. That's where I struggle the most about. Like you're talking as if all what you're talking about is good for both of their age groups. Is there not a differentiate? You know what I mean?
Well-
Difference between like a kindergartner and a fifth grader. You know what I mean?
That may come in differently when you talk about specific rules. You may have a little bit differences in the rules.
And chores, like what's.
But the
appropriate.
expectations, you want to keep those consistent throughout your home. The be safe, be respectful, be responsible. You're going to be expecting that whether your child is 18 or 8, so those expectations, you want it to be consistent. And that's similar within our school. We have those expectations throughout the school, but in specific rules. In a kindergarten room, you may see even different terminology than you do a 5th grade room. But overall, we are being consistent in those expectations we're expecting from our students, such as be safe, be responsible, be
Which I
respectful.
struggled with the whole be safe because it was so vague. It was so, as he went through the different grades.
Right.
I don't know that I was really clear on the specific rules that fell underneath that, or nobody explained it to me that way. And what is reasonable to expect? How many rules are appropriate for a preschool or a kindergartner versus a 4th, 5th grader?
I mean, tell me your opinion of this, Mrs. Kimblin, but I don't think there should be more than 3 to 5 rules in each area, because no matter what the age, because many more than that, and I really think that it's hard to internalize. That's my opinion.
Sometimes I don't have quite that issue, but I do notice that with my youngest, she's 4 and a half, she's coming to kindergarten next year. I try to put the rules that I have with my oldest on the youngest, and I'm constantly having to back myself up to remind myself she's still little.
And that's that's what makes positive behavior support so useful, because your expectations in your mind, what developmentally is appropriate per age. But with positive behavior support, the whole idea is to teach them those desired behaviors, and it's never too early to learn what you want them to do, and it's not necessarily a punishing system if they're not doing it as much as a rewarding system. So you'd be surprised, even with the little ones. I can tell you, I teach kindergarten, and just hearing the terminology that many of them use of, I want to be a good leader, I want to do this, or we need to be respectful, they will suck that up like a sponge. And by rewarding that behavior, you're going to see it increase of what you're wanting to see. Now, you may understand if you're a kindergartner, as they're learning, makes a few more choices that you weren't hoping to see than your 5th grader or 6th grader, but you're still going to want to teach them those behaviors. It's never too early to teach them the behaviors that you're wanting to see and to reward when they're seeing it. And the more you do that rewarding of the behavior, the more you're going to see that happening throughout the home. Does that answer your question? And as for our school, we actually have a matrix that we can share with you that talks about our specific rules in each area. And I'll pass this around if you want to take a look at what our rules look like per area under the Be Safe and Responsible.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've ever seen.
And this is something we actually use as staff in the school, which you may or may not have seen the matrix, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like, the rules in the specific
Is
areas.
this
Yeah, that
something
would be-
similar that goes home like in the first part of the plan or at the very beginning of the year? There's usually the pullouts that we have to sign and turn back in. Is this something similar to that, like discipline?
I'm not sure that the matrix has actually, it's the matrix. No, we actually send a pamphlet home for parents talking about that. I don't know if you saw the colorful pamphlet that more kind of gives an overview.
Yeah, I've seen overview. I've never seen something specific like that.
That's mostly for our teachers, so that they can work on those behaviors. I mean, we can send that home, it's not like it's a secret or anything, so that parents know what we're working on at school.
I would appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I like it.
I mean, we can definitely send that home. We
I'm
just
sorry,
use
I
it-
did have another question here.
Sure.
The first 3, the honored honors, the honorific student awards, and the honors making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
How do the students learn about those 3?
We actually have classroom meetings in each classroom, and that's where they're introduced in the beginning of the year. And we introduce it to them, but really when they internalize it is when they see them start to be awarded. And these are actually given out on the news for all students to see on a weekly basis, so they understand that they're coming home.
So
And
it's only an introduction in the beginning of the year.
it's throughout as needed in classroom meetings, but it's really taught in the beginning, and then it comes up weekly on the news because Mrs. Kimplin and Mrs. Hermanson talks about.
And when we have a week or two where Ms. Kimplin and I have less to read, we say to the kids, now remember, you can get these by, and so we go over that with the kids on the news, and that's throughout the year. So in the beginning of the year, they
And
get it.
it's not just awarded, it's, you remember you
Ex-
can read these
Absolutely.
by doing this.
And exactly, in fact, for the honored honors, as they're given out by teachers or any staff member throughout the school, it's actually said, you get an honored honor for showing responsibility, number 2, and they have to check these off before they can put them into the drawing. So the students are getting that as they're given out throughout the year, they're hearing it said, even if it's not being given to them specifically, they're hearing it said to whoever's getting it. Good job, you just showed me number 6, Karen, you earned this, and then they have to check that off and write their name on the back. And with the honors making a difference, Mrs. Hermanson and Mrs. Kimplin come around and make it a big deal within the classroom as well. So when they see these given out, they come around and really cheer it up and say, this is for being a good role model and really making a difference in our school, so that they understand what it's for as the awards are given out. They're taught in the beginning, and then it's reinforced throughout the year
On the
as.
news, right, it's on the news, and we reinforce, we're looking for more of these each
Mhm.
week.
Yeah,
We
this
don't
is
get many of those.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah, I haven't seen those
this
before.
one.
And this one is a call from you.
Positive one
I
anyway.
got one of those either.
But you know, this one is truly
That's a
an
very
above and beyond.
Specific, only maybe, we only do a handful of those.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
The other
My
ones
son's
will
out.
read, I don't know, 30, 40.
Last week I read like 30 of them, I had to
Yeah.
stop, but
The
we
green
had
one,
3 of those.
We read a lot. Those, maybe 3, maybe 1 in the whole school of 1,100.
This
So-
week, for example, this week, we're on the news tomorrow. This week we have 5 of the green ones, and we have none of those turned in.
I've even heard of them before.
So those are really hard to get. Those are that top tier.
I've seen
The
them.
green ones, your kids may have come home with those, maybe not, and the honored otters, they
I
may
would-
lose those slips.
And they
give those
actually-
out a lot more.
And they
Those
don't
get
bring
a
these
lot.
home,
No.
but I would venture to say every
tell you
student
right
in the
when they get
school
in the
has
car.
received at least one, if not
They do.
more, honored honors, because these are given out all the time by staff members throughout the school.
And the news is weekly?
Yes.
Daily. The news is daily,
Okay.
but this
Daily,
award
we're
is
on
given
there
weekly.
We're not.
I have a
They don't
question.
Sure.
And mine's a little different. I have one child who's a special needs child, and I have another child who has a processing disorder. So she needs constant going over rules and expectations and things like that. Where we've talked to, the counselors here and different people, and we've got boards set up for her, reminders of what she has to do, so that we're constantly not reminding her. Yet she doesn't implement them, and she obviously understands this because she does really well here in terms of it. How do you deal with a child like that who you can show the person how to do it 10 times and she still doesn't remember, or it just isn't important? How do you go over that without it becoming redundant to her and annoying? And
I can actually tell you within the classroom we differentiate for our students on a regular basis, where we have students who have different needs, and many times they need a specific, what we call a behavior plan, where they're getting reinforcement more often until they learn it and internalize it. And then you we call it scaffolding. You give them that scaffolding to where maybe in the beginning when you're first teaching it, you recognize it every half an hour or so, let's just say. And as time goes on, you start to pull that away a little bit and make it a little bit more time in between until it's something that's just a part of her core values of what she believes and what she does.
that'd be crazy.
And
I told
you know,
her how to do that one task 1,000 times and she still can't do it.
and another thing that I really think is powerful is the modeling of, look at me, this is what I do when I wash dishes. I pick up, as silly as what it sounds sometimes for adults to think that, thinking in the mind of a child of, watch what I do. Now you show me, how do you wash a plate? To us, it's just second nature, and we feel like, you know, they just know because we just know, but really teaching that and understanding that each individual is different. And you'll learn a little bit more about modalities in just a few minutes with Mrs. Collins when she comes back. But really understanding that each child is different and they may actually need that acting out with you there to support and say, good job, that's exactly how you do it, nice work. And really compliment, wow, role model, playing it out, role playing together. And I think that really makes a difference. That sometimes instead of just, you know, sometimes we have auditory learners, but more often we have those hands-on learners that need to actually do something before they understand and internalize that.
Thank you.
No problem. If you want to take just a few minutes, you have a green sheet on your table that's a little reflection sheet. And you either before or after or while you're doing this, if you want to go pick up a snack, we have some popcorn in the back and we have some waters in the front cooler right at the table where Mrs. Kimplin is sitting. That cooler has waters and then we have cups of popcorn on top of it. Feel free to go get a snack and fill out your reflection sheet. And in just a few minutes, we're going to share out at our tables and just see if you have, because you are the experts, you have your children every day and we'd love to hear your comments and ideas as well. So let's just take 2 to 3 minutes to jot your ideas down, get a snack, and then we'll share out in just a few minutes. If you just want to take a minute or two to share at your table, maybe you could join. You could join this table and share, or just turn around actually and join right behind you, and sharing ideas you have for something that works well in your home.
Trust me, we probably do it too.
I don't know what works well in my home, actually.
Are they shy or
No?
you talk? Okay. How do I press it to move? You're recording. Here.
Does anybody have an idea they'd like to share out that works really well at your home?
I know something that we're big on doing is towards the end of the year or when report cards come out, if we see like all A's and B's, and sometimes we are sketchy at home about receiving C's, we try to make it a point to it's always promised like they'll get one toy or one item, and we always stick rules on what they can get, or we teach them when you go pick this toy out, there's a dollar amount associated with it.
That's
We
excellent.
try to teach stuff into the reward. So far it seems to be working, but we do encounter problems like within the month they get that reward and they do the brain dump. You know, and then they
Right.
go right back to, so it's like a constant working on that.
That's great, though. That's excellent for rewarding that behavior you want to see. One thing that I often talk with my students about as well is setting up those rewards that are not necessarily even tangible, but just the reward of time. They love to be able to pick a family member to play a game with for a half an hour, or to be able to be the helper with some certain task. You know, just brainstorming and actually going along with that. I'm going to work with the student for the rest of the time tonight while Miss Armstrong and Miss Collins are here, and we're going to read this book called Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And it's really cute about what motivates you, what makes you happy, and how doing things for others often will also make you feel happy and fill your bucket is how we're calling it. And each student is going to get their own little bucket and write ideas for what fills their bucket. So just a little aha to you that if you want to take a peek at this, your child is going to write different things that motivate him or her that you could use to reward that behavior. It's have you filled a bucket today? And there's actually an adult version of this too called Drops in a Bucket that's really a good book as well. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'll see you in a little while. I'm going to go work with the students. Thank you.
Okay, and she's going to go with you. I told her there's things over there he can
Absolutely.
do and experience. Okay, so my little segment's going to be about responsibility and why we want our children to be responsible. is, you know, so that they can grow up to be helpful to us, but also good citizens. Good citizens are usually responsible citizens. So some things that we can do to encourage responsible behavior is to make sure to involve your child in discussions about things you want them to do, whether it's behavior, chores around the house. When it comes to jobs or chores, the type of discussion you want to have is to involve them. By involving them, you're doing more than telling them, and of course, there's an amount of self-control or control of a situation when a child can talk with you and help decide which chores they'd maybe like to do. So you kind of talk about what kind of things need to be done and which things they're capable of for their age and their safety. And then you set some ground rules. I always tell parents you want to write it down. When you have these kind of wonderful conversations, you write down what jobs they say they think they can do. And I think when CJ talked, she probably said about expectations, about 3. Same with a job or chore type of thing or a behavior change thing. You don't want to go over 3 because that'd be too much for any elementary age student. So involve them in the discussion and write it down, and that avoids the later on, you know, when they do the, well, no, you said, right? Okay, so you want them to, you want to be able to go, you don't want the arguments, so you want to be able to look at the paper and say, no, this is what we agreed on right here. And I say do that with the consequences too, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. It's consequences. It eliminates a lot of that dialogue after where you're negotiating all over again. You only want to negotiate that one time you're at the table talking. Involving them empowers them. And just like us as people, we know when we're in our jobs or with our families, we like a certain amount of control over what we do. Kids are the same way. By giving them a little bit rather than telling them what to do all the time, you're going to have their buy-in. Don't try to change everything at once, which is where I said the 3 to 5. You want to not go, actually maybe not even 5, start with 3. And then a lot of practice. 21 days, the research says it takes 21 days to change a behavior or develop a positive habit. And what you're trying to do through responsibility is teach them positive habits. Okay? So, let's look at the next slide. 3 steps for teaching children to accept responsibility is let them select, as we just talked about. Chores should be anything that involve personal care, helping care for the household, or money management. Be sure it's appropriate for their ability and encourage them to do the right thing. In other words, if your goal was to have them start making their own bed, we know that they're not going to do it the way we would do it. Okay, so when company comes, you do it. When company isn't coming, they can start doing it every day. But to encourage them to do the right thing, the first couple of times you would show them, this is where you want the pillow, this is how you want the coverlid or the comforter pulled up, and what stuffed animals go on top. Not every car and truck in the house, right? So you kind of show them, and then a couple of times you do it with them, a couple of days you do it together. And then when they start, the hard part is, wow, you did a good job. Even if it's all wrinkly and it doesn't look like you would do it, you just want to give them that praise. And over time, of course, as they age, they improve. But praise what they do, their effort, because as long as they're getting it halfway up there or pretty much up there, even if it's like all sliding down side and stuff, you want to let them know they're doing well, and then they'll keep doing it. Of course, when they don't, we'll talk about that in a minute, what happens when they feel like they're not measuring up, okay? So encouraging them and share your expectations. Make sure your expectation isn't unrealistic for their age. Require them to accept consequences of their actions. When you sit down and make these 3 things or whatever that they're going to start doing, have your consequences ahead of time, because when you're not overheated and you're not in a hurry, you're going to think of consequences that are logically related to what's going on. And if one of them is maybe you want to work on bedtime routines, and of course if you give them that final time that everything has to be done, teeth brushed, pajamas on, in the bed, ready to go,
the most logical consequence if they don't make it is what? What would you say? Logically related to the behavior.
If you have a bedtime story, then no story that night.
No story. That hurts us because we love our kids to read, right? So how about if you can't get to bed on time, you're just going to have to go to bed earlier the next night, right?
I thought
We
that was kind of mean, but I was like, I'd send them earlier.
No, we've done it.
Sometimes consequence building can be,
I'm thinking I need a break.
and sometimes consequence building can be a little like we've
It's
got to
funny
be
to tackle that
tough.
in particular, because I struggle with that one. I'm like, I don't know what consequence. Like, if you're not ready for bed, you're not ready for bed. I don't know what to do.
So the next night you start earlier and you go to bed a little earlier because this actually made us late because I, as a parent, am not giving up that book. That book is important. It's part of what's bonding us as a mom and a child, or as a father and child, right? So you don't want to give up the book. And so instead you start earlier the next night and then they have to go to bed maybe 15 minutes earlier. Some parents will jump to the half hour right away. I'm like, but is that realistic for you? Mostly not. Mostly you've got to get the
Which is why
dinner
I've
and
never
you've got all.
carried through on my thread.
But we want you to start carrying through. So look, instead of those half hour or those great big consequences, start looking at it more like a 10-minute. Well, we'll do 10 minutes earlier tonight, you know?
I never thought about having such a little amount of time, and then I worried that it was so far from the actual infraction that it lost its.
And the older they get, they can go a little bit more with it being a little bit away from the infraction. But they know bedtime's a biggie at most homes, getting them into that bed on time. So they kind of know when they've been cheated in their mind, right? They're going early. No kid likes to do that. It's a tough one. It makes us a little meanie, but we want them to become responsible so they can make good choices, because as they move into their teenage years, you want them set up to realize what good choices do. Good choices help make their life easier. And that's what you want to start showing them too. As they make the good choices and you're praising them for things, you know, good choices make a family run easier. It makes that we can go out and do more fun things. When we're not tired, we don't get in arguments as much, you know. Help them see all the benefits of cooperating and building responsibility through good choices. And they like pleasing us. Even though they like to argue with us, most kids do like to please us too. So this is the hard part. For what I deal with on a daily basis with kids and families, requiring them to accept their consequences, we don't like to stick with it. We kind of start to feel sorry for them. We start to make excuses for them, okay? Or they make excuses to us and we start buying it. Oh yeah, no, I know that was too hard for you. Just think of when you taught them to do shoelaces, okay? You teach them, you're all patient the first couple times, but then you're always in a hurry. So let mom do it, let dad do it, right? So that kind of thing, the consequence, of course, is you would run out the door without them or all running late. You've got to give them the latitude and the time sometimes to do the things that we've agreed or you've decided you want them to work on. And it will come, but that time factor too gets in our way, and that we feel sorry for them, and then we start doing stuff for them. Then we take that control back, don't we? When we start doing too much for them. So can anybody think of an example that they wanted to, or that they're thinking in their mind, like how would I do this consequence? Or okay, well, if you think of one as we keep talking, I'll help you think it through, okay? What are some things children do to avoid responsibility?
They don't listen.
Hmm?
They don't listen.
They don't like to do it.
Yeah.
They don't want to stop playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they just don't do it.
They don't want to. So how can we balance that? We could put rewards in place, you know, for the child who isn't still cooperating to go to bed or whatever. What kind of non-expensive, non-costly reward would you put in place to help them start wanting to cooperate for bedtime?
We've given Alex chips, poker chips, and she starts with so many and then can lose them from not getting stuff done, and it gives her time back. Like if you've lost time, you have to go to bed early. You can use that to gain your time back. Or if for a negative, if she's not behaving, she has to go to bed earlier. Extra TV time, a little more snuggle time.
She
so
can
that
buy that with her chips. That's all
Or
in
tickets.
things that don't cost money, and that's where you really want to go, because you don't really want to get into buying something even at the dollar store on a regular basis, because then you're just teaching them it's all about money too. Plus,
That-
you're
and
going to
it
go
doesn't have to
broke.
be that specific day. It could be on the weekend when you've got more time and we can do something else. and she can
Right.
use it at that point.
Right, and usually kids want time with us anyway.
Mhm.
Anything that you can support through more time with you, they value that because we're so busy, and they know it. Somebody over here.
We do the same thing. We have passes where it's an extra 15 minutes to stay up, or if they're outside and I say it's time to come in, they can give me the 15-minute pass. Or we have I don't let them have dessert during the week, but I have a little pass that they can have one free night dessert for the week. You know, that day.
That's a real motivator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or one free. I have to clean their room pass. They have that.
Oh, you get to clean their
Yeah.
room? I like that one.
I
Can
like
I
that.
can I get on your
I like
chips
that one.
thing?
They love
Can I
that
be
one.
on your program?
Or one free chore. They have chores during the week,
Mhm.
and they can give me a pass that one day they don't have to do one chore.
Right, that's really neat. So there's some ideas for you. You know, I know some children are not allowed to play video games Monday through Thursday. And one thing you can do is add up that, okay, if you get to bed on time, I'm going to, on the weekend, give you 10, 15 more minutes of video game time on the weekend when you can play it. Okay, so you try to find the reward that they like the most, and that's what you build on. Because you kind of need the both. But one reason children avoid responsibility is criticism. When we don't let them know it was done well enough, we want them to improve on what they did too soon, too quick. Okay, so fear of failure, that's kind of a fear of failure, isn't it? I didn't do it good enough, so why even bother? So catch yourself with that. You know, they're not going to wipe the kitchen table as good as us. They're not going to make the bed as good as us. They're not going to be as kind to their brother or sister as we are. One way to stop the arguments between brothers and sisters, if you know who started it,
Tell me that.
they have to pay the other guy one of these coins or something, especially if they're hitters. You know, when they have to start paying off that brother or sister, that teaches responsibility really fast, especially when those either chips or real money has value to them. Responsibility equals, this is my little thing that goes in my head to help me remember. Responsibility is about choice. So you put the choice and you let them suffer the consequence, for good or bad, unless it involves safety for now or safety for the long run. There's certain things we can't let them learn through consequence, but for the most part, letting them do it for themselves, even when we know they're doing it wrong, right? Unless they'll get hurt. And that's a hard thing, because we as a society, we're always in a hurry. We always want to do things because we got a zillion other things we want to do. This is the sweetest time of their life, when life moves at a different pace. You know, so if you can let them have that a little bit, that little extra time, and don't expect perfection, but expect some fun. Let it be some fun. That's why you're going to write things down, because here are all my golden rules for helping make consequences effective. To begin with, we talked about it's got to be logically related to whatever they're doing. Have some problem-solving conversations, and if you do write things down from what you're going to do, they're going to do, to the rewards and the consequence, when they want to get into that argument, you walk away. Take yourself out of the argument. You don't have to engage in every argument a child wants to do about what you said or what they need to do. You know, no, we put it on paper and leave the room. Okay? You don't need timeout for everything. But timeouts are great. And timeouts too, you know, it's the rule of 1 minute per year. Okay, and they can actually do a timeout at the table with the whole family around. Did you know that? And it can be very effective. The idea of timeout is removal from the social circle. So they're removed, that they can't talk to the other people in the family or play what the other kids are playing or do the same things, but it's that removal. So you don't always need a bedroom. You don't always need another room. depending on the infraction and how serious it is. Make sure your consequence is reasonable, and when you enforce the consequence, that's another reason to write it down, because when we're overheated and we put out a consequence for 2 weeks, what do?
It ends up one day.
It ends up one day, because we're all so sorry the next day, right? We feel so bad that we lost our temper at our child and our poor baby. So make sure you make it reasonable, and by writing things down, and you can have the same 3 consequences for everything, okay? You don't need a list for every infraction. Don't try to appeal to their emotions. That means don't get in an argument with them. Walk away. Withdraw from the conflict. You don't have to argue everything out, because they're not going to listen when you're arguing. Make consequences black and white. That's writing it down. And how do you know if these consequences are working anyway?
Things get better.
You hope. That's the 21 days. Remember, 21 days. But basically, you know, because they're being held accountable. Accountability builds responsibility. Okay? So just remember, let your children live with their consequences, positive or negative. Positive, I studied every day, and I got an A on my math test. I knew it was coming on Thursday. I studied every night, and look, I got an A. Point out to them that's a positive consequence. And we all know the negatives, you know. You didn't eat, no dessert. And if they have to go hungry to the next meal, as long as they have water, you're not hurting your child, okay? I mean, I see it in my own family. I'm like, quit arguing. Let them not eat. Give them some water in between, but don't give them a bite between. Like, don't give them a snack, but they have to have water. Yes. Yes.
What about repeating? My son, for example, I will tell him that he cannot, just keeps repeating and repeating and asking. It's like it doesn't stop.
So that must work for him.
It doesn't work. I ignore him. I try, and then it finally stops. But it's like, how do you get them to? You tell them no, or they cannot do it, and they ask one. Like they just listen the first time.
Kids usually do things for attention. So is he getting some manner of attention for it?
Probably, yeah.
So kind of look at yourself and see what attention you're giving, even if it's the eye thing or whatever, because maybe you need to find a different way to withdraw, because he's probably getting something from it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get down on the level, like with my 4.5-year-old, and she's like, you know, I just stop and I look at her and I say, I hear you, you know, and as long as she sees that I have to stare right at her, it stops just like that. If I don't do that, it's, you know.
I'm just like, really? No.
Yeah, what's that?
Yeah.
I try to do it nicely, but sometimes
It's attention seeking for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is, absolutely.
And so what you got to kind of look at is what kind of attention are you giving to them when they're doing those behaviors, and it takes some reflection. Okay.
And I agree. We see that in the schools too. We have kids who will want something and they'll ask and we'll say no, not right now, and they'll keep asking, and so I understand. I think sometimes it comes with that validation, just saying, I understand that you're concerned about that, but I've said that right now we're not going to, do that, or that's not allowed at this point. I think sometimes it takes acknowledging their feelings. I understand that that's how you feel, but I've said that, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. Setting up those clear expectations. But sometimes they'll try it a few times before that, they kind of catch on. So I certainly understand what you mean by that. Well, we're just going to talk for a few minutes about some other things to do to kind of help our students succeed. And by being here, we know that you are incredibly supportive family members. And so some of this may seem repetitive. We're certainly not harping on anything. But sometimes we'll notice things from students, and even students will share some of these concerns. And so first we're just going to talk about a few studying faux pas or some common slip-ups that sometimes happen with students involving, sometimes getting overwhelmed with school, sometimes kind of feeling burnout, or maybe not feeling as motivated. One thing that we see a lot is the overscheduling, just lots and lots of extracurriculars. I know we're nodding our heads. It's so hard to say no to some of those things. It's just something to be aware of. I thought that picture, I think, sometimes describes it all. Sometimes, when there's baseball and dance and gymnastics and all those things after school, students will start to feel like homework and school is sort of an extra. and they start to feel like they don't have time for school, but they do have to find time for those things. And so it's just important to be mindful of those. We certainly believe in the value and the benefit of all those extracurricular activities, but just noting, what might be too much. If it means, kind of setting some moderation, like, we're going to focus on one activity at a time, or even two, just so that our students aren't so involved with other things that they're feeling like school is a back burner. Because that sends a message that they can carry on, even as they get older and might have the opportunity to do more extracurriculars. So we just want to be aware of that. Another is helping too quickly, and I can say that as an educator, it's something that's very hard for me when I see a struggling student. I want to come over and say, no, this is the way you do it. But a transition in the schools right now is that we are transitioning to the Common Core standards. And with that, there's a transition to focusing more and more on problem-based learning or inquiry-based learnings, on sort of having students work through a problem and kind of brainstorm and figure out maybe how they might be able to solve it without us telling them as directly, this is how you solve this type of problem. And so with that transition, it's really important to maybe if we see a student struggling to kind of guide them toward that answer before showing them that right answer. So, if they ask you how to spell something, suggest they look it up rather than spelling it for them. If they're struggling with a math problem, maybe help them ask some questions that can kind of probe that without saying, oh, this is how you do it. So we just want to kind of help our students to become more and more of problem solvers and able to think critically without us rescuing too quickly. And of course, this touches on what Mrs. Armstrong was talking about, but letting them face the consequences of their decisions, such as if they procrastinate, don't get a good grade, then they'll probably learn to work a little harder that next time. And of course, it's hard not to do that when we have multiple students that we see, but we just want to be mindful of comparing students and of acknowledging those individual needs. And then, of course, talking negatively about homework or school. Sometimes we will see that where students know that maybe a parent had a negative experience in school, and so when they hear about that and know that, sometimes they'll create their own expectation of that. So we just don't want them to have a negative view of school, or to hear those views and expect that for themselves. We do want to make sure that homework and schoolwork is understood, that it's part of that daily routine. Again, this ties in with that comment about overscheduling, rather than just an unfortunate addition that they have to kind of cram in somewhere. So we just want them to understand that value, that this is really their job, their responsibility at this point in their life. And then of course using studying or homework as a consequence. That's tough, but we don't want to make them go read in timeout as a consequence and have them develop a negative view of reading, because it's a consequence for them. Of course, if it's logically related, that's one thing, but we just want to be careful about that. All right. This really made me laugh. It talks about active children. We know that so many of our students are very active. And so you just see a little quote there. Some kids are born active. If they aren't kicking a ball down the street, they're climbing a tree or swinging from a rope. Most of them, those very active children, and this comes from Mary Lonehart in this book, says they're not going to sit down for long periods of time to read, and so it's difficult to get them to sit down and do anything that's academically related. And basically it talks about the importance of keeping reading materials handy for active children. So the idea of if they're like microwaving their food, or if they're eating cereal in the morning, just having reading materials or other academic things close by that they have access to, so that when they're quick and up and moving around, they can do that in those few minutes, because we probably aren't going to expect them to have that longer attention span and sit with that for a longer time as much. So the idea is about incorporating reading and other academics into your daily routine that you have already, not adding more responsibilities. We know everyone is, we all have a ton of things on our plates. And then using that downtime. So like a comic book beside the microwave, or a riddle book in the bathroom, or a book on the coffee table, ottoman, or nightstand. And of course some of these are things that would be pretty obvious. And then also just incorporating reading and academics and problem solving into things like baking. If they're reading a recipe, then they're they're kind of learning how math works as it relates to real life. And they're having to practice those reading skills, even doing that. Or playing games as well, looking at the instructions, reading the different little cards. So just having access to those reading materials, even while our very active children are involved in all the things that they are. All right, and then in just a few minutes, our students are going to join us, and we're going to do a little activity to help us think about learning styles. This is really interesting because when we know the different learning styles of students, it helps us as educators to differentiate the way that we instruct with them. And it also can be really interesting to the things that you might be doing at home. Knowing our learning styles helps us to work more efficiently because we can spend our time based on if I'm a visual learner versus an auditory learner. I'm just going to show you this quick video clip here. This will just sort of explain a little bit of the rationale between looking at that, and then we have a little quiz that you'll be able to do with your students.
Hi, I'm Jenna Wagner and I teach early elementary students. It's no surprise that different kids learn in different ways. Sometimes I find there are as many different ways of learning in my classroom as there are kids. We're going to break down some of these learning personalities and give you some concrete tips on how to set up your individual learner for success. All kids use many senses to learn, but some tend to understand things better when they see pictures along with the information. These are visual learners, and I have lots of them in my classroom. Using images to represent concepts can really bring it home for kids who are visual learners.
This part's called an analog clock, has a face. Does that make sense? Why do you think they call it a face?
It's really round. This is your nose and then everything else.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a face like that too.
If your child has a complicated assignment, you can help by doing an image search online or doing a drawing to help her understand what she's learning.
When the townspeople went outside the
For some kids, information really lands when they hear it. Maybe your child reads aloud even when she's reading to herself. It's very common to see kids doing this, especially when they're first starting to read on their own. There's this great device that I like to use with my students who need to read aloud and hear themselves. This is a reading phone. It magnifies sound, and I get them at my local teacher supply store, but you can also make them. All you need to do is go to your local home improvement store, get some PVC piping, put it together, and you have your own at-home phone.
The menu varies by the time they woke up in the morning. Breakfast was coming down after a brief shower of orange juice.
The reading phone helps with both comprehension and fluency because an auditory learner will really benefit from hearing herself. If you think that your child might absorb information better by touching, here's something you can try.
One partner is going to push a few buttons under your plate, okay, while the other partner turns around. And you have to figure out, based on how many are left outside of the plate, how many are underneath the plate.
All right, Coop.
17.
Let you know.
Because 20 minus 2 would equal 17. And so 20 minus 3 equals 17.
You want to check? Tactile learners are hands-on learners. Math can easily translate for a tactile learner. Very good. Some tactile learners find that reading chapter books is very challenging. It can be hard to track the words across the page. A simple piece of cardstock can provide just enough of a marker for your child. This way, she can keep track of what she reads. Kids learn in many different ways. You might find that a combination of these methods will work best for your child. So mix it up at home and try new things. There isn't a right way to learn, so find what works best for you and your child. Look for other tips on learning personalities at scholastic.com/parents.
A lot of different ways of looking at learning styles, but one common way is breaking it down into visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, or sometimes they call it tactile, and so that's what we're going to look at today. As you do the little quiz with your students in just a second, I'm going to call down and get them to come down. I'd just like for you to work with them if they're here with you, see what their responses are, and also kind of note maybe if it were you answering the questions, how you might do it differently. I know that it was very interesting for me just looking at this. I was doing the quiz going, oh my goodness, I'm so visual. I mean, I don't even think about something like that. But you really start to notice those differences, and maybe the way that you approach things might be different than the way that your child might even benefit from it being best. All right. So the quizzes are in the middle of your table. There's some markers there because they may show up the best. Basically, it's 20 questions. You'll just start with the side that has number 1. Go through, find the best answer. And then at the end, we're going to see what you have the most of. If you have the most eyes, ears, or hands. All right, I know some of you are still finishing, but I just want to go ahead and show this to you for those of you who are finished. I know some of them have. Basically, the column that has the most is going to describe overall kind of the type of learner that you most are like. It's normal for us to have a mix of some audio, some auditory, some visual, and some kinesthetic, but you'll generally see a bit of a theme. And so these are some just descriptions of visual learners. Might prefer to read information, look at graphics, watch a demonstration. They might get impatient listening to an explanation. Auditory might prefer to listen to an explanation, but they might be sensitive to background sounds. A kinesthetic learner might prefer hands-on activities and might have difficulty staying still. So I see some of you nodding your heads. You're just paying attention to those. I do have some handouts of some more descriptors of the different learning styles. They look like this, and this. I do have them. I don't have them in color for you, but I do have them on colored paper. If you'd like to take any of them that maybe would describe your learning the best, it's really interesting. It talks about if they tend to be a faster talker, maybe a more descriptive talker. If they like to take breaks and how they would study best. So it's really interesting to look at some of those characteristics, and you might notice, oh yeah, I have seen those kinds of things, and it sort of explains why. All right, and then on the last page, we do have some additional resources for you. That Scholastic page has a lot of videos and things that are really interesting in terms of looking at schoolwork. Mrs. Armstrong was passing out. Did you pass it out, the little thing? Oh, okay, we don't have it yet. Okay. And so as you're finishing, you're welcome to continue working for a few minutes. That's totally fine. And if you have any questions, we'd love to hear those. And then we also do just have a quick little survey that our parents can fill out. We just love to get your feedback so that we can design the best programs we can. So if you take a minute as you leave to fill that out and give it back to us, we'd really appreciate that.